Hey guys, Mr. Snelling here. Just want to talk to you guys and give you guys a bit of an introduction to the different things that we're going to be doing this year in modern studies. So obviously, we're starting out the year a little bit differently than what we normally would, but we're going to do everything that we can to support you guys, make sure that everybody's ready to go and on track for next year. So it's like I said, you guys have been doing a really good job as far as engaging with remote learning and things, and so we're going to be starting on Monday, um, moving into your national qualifications. Now, whenever you look at it, and you're probably wondering, like, obviously in S3, whenever you would have done modern studies, we are doing some different topics than what you would have focused on. And so the National 4 and National 5 topics for modern studies this year are crime and law is what we're going to start with. That's what we're going to be doing up until the summer and then a little bit into the school year. You're also going to be covering Scottish politics, in particular with looking at the way that the Scottish government works, and world politics. And in this unit, I'm pretty excited about it, as you can tell. If you haven't had me, you can maybe hear my accent, but we're doing the USA. Now, that's going to be the units that we cover in class. There also is, if you're doing National 4, you're going to do an added value unit. We're going to do some research on your own and we'll work you through and talk you through about how all of that works. If you're doing National 5, you're going to have your assignment where you pick a topic and you research it, and then we have a timed assessment that we do later on in the year. Yeah. Now, when we start looking at the exam for this year, there's three sections to the exam. So the exam split up into the three units that we just talked about: crime and law, democracy in Scotland, and the USA, which is, it's not technically called the USA unit or the America unit because you could cover any world power. It's the world power unit, and we just happen to be choosing the US. So each section has a mixture of knowledge questions as well as inquiry skills. Now, your knowledge questions are based on things that you need to know. The answers are going to come from things that you've learned and the examples and everything that you've learned in class. And so we're going to discuss the different structure about how you need to tackle each one of those, whether it be a 4-mark question where it's point and explain, where you're not having to have as much to get 4 marks, or if it's an 8-marker where you're having to write 3-mark paragraphs and stuff like that. But it's something we'll walk you through, and you'll become really comfortable with the structure and the things that you need to know to go into those questions as time goes on. The other ones are inquiry skills. And that's where they give you the information. So you get a selection of facts and figures and things where you need to pull the information from the text that they give you, which we've done some work with that with S3, and we're going to go into that a bit more detail. Now, all of those are 10-mark questions. So it can be selective use of facts, where you need to pick and choose some information and you need to kind of prove a point. And say whether or not you agree or disagree with something. Then you have the conclusion questions, which is where you have to formulate conclusions about certain bullet points as you work through. And then you also have options questions, which is where you choose an option to argue throughout the paper. Like I said, we're going to completely support you guys, and by the time it gets to anywhere near the exam time, you guys are going to be completely comfortable with how to answer this. I know it sounds like quite a bit, but there's basically, that's it. There's 3 sections on the exam, and they're made up, and we'll walk you through exactly what's going on. So on the exam though, on the inquiry skills, there's only 1 selective use of facts, 1 conclusion question, and 1 option question. So that's something, I mean, we got ages to worry about that, and you guys are going to be in good shape once it gets time to get there and leading up into your prelims and everything like that. Nothing to stress about at all. Now, one question you may be asking is so I'm just going to go through the 3 units really quickly and just talk about, I'm not going into huge detail, just the types of things that we're going to be discussing as we go through the course. So basically, we're going to talk about, in crime and law, we're going to talk about the nature and the different extent of crime, the different types of crimes that get committed, the causes of crime, the impact of crime, and that's something that gets overlooked quite a lot. How does crime impact people, as well as the people who are victims as well as the people who are the perpetrators, people committing the crimes. What are the efforts that police are doing to control crime? What's going on in the courts? What's the court system in Scotland? How is it all set up? What are the different levels? Sentencing, we talk about custodial sentences where people go to prison, and non-custodial sentences where well, they don't, and they do things like community service and things like that. Also, the Scottish juvenile system as well. Now, the next unit that we discuss is Scottish democracy. So what will you learn? We're going to discuss what are devolved and reserved powers. So devolved powers are things that Scotland controls its own destiny on. It has things like police, and we'll get into more detail on education. Reserved powers are things that the UK government controls, and that moves us into things discussing the differences in some detail of Westminster versus Holyrood. Also, we're going to discuss political parties. And the way that they go about going through elections and getting elected and representing the people and their beliefs. The role of an MSP, what do they do? What does a member of Scottish Parliament do once they're in? What's their day-to-day job look like? How do you get in touch with them? Things like that. The role of the First Minister, things like question time and things that she does. The different voting systems. So we got AMS, which is the additional member system, something specific to Scotland, and first past the post, FPTP. First past the post is something where it's just a different way that's done it. It's a combination that's done in Scotland, and we'll get into a lot more detail of that as the class goes on. What are the different types of media? So we'll talk about things like social media as well, like Facebook and Instagram, as well as the more traditional types with newspapers and television and things of that nature. And then lastly, we'll discuss pressure groups, which are things like unions. It can also be things like the SPCA, and that's a pressure group looking out for the well-being of animals and pets and things of that nature. So that's what we're going to discuss with Scottish democracy and how those pressure groups sort of can impact what's going on in politics and regular lives of regular people. Now, the last unit that we're going to be discussing is the World Power Unit, and we're going to be focusing on the USA. So what we learn, so we're going to talk about the structure of the government, how it's all set up, what are the different branches of government, how they all work together. We're also going to talk about the same and how the state government, so there's 50 individual states that all make up the US government, and they work independently of each other in some ways, much like similar in a way to Scotland and the UK government. What's the different political representation? How is the government kind of split up between different groups of people, and how we can kind of focus on representation, equal representation as well. Gun control as an issue is something that's really important in the States that's going on. It's something that we'll discuss. And then a big chunk of what we do is discussing the inequalities in America. So what are the inequalities in healthcare? It's a completely different health system. So there's not the NHS where I come from, obviously, which you guys have heard about that, I'm sure. Education systems, how does it change based on where you live versus how much money you make, things like that. Crime rate, how is it, like, basically are you more or less likely to commit a crime based on where you're from and how much money you have and different things like that, as well as we're going to talk about inequalities and income. It gets into a lot of different things regarding ethnic race and ethnic makeup and location and money and all the different things that go into that. And then we're also going to look at some of the government responses to inequality to try and solve the problem. I don't know about you guys, but I'm really looking forward to being able to get hunkered down and get going with stuff that for next year's work, and start working on our qualifications and moving forward with things that we need to know and get back to some sort of sense of normalcy. I know that this isn't the most easy time to sort of work through everything, and just make sure that you know that we're all here, your classroom teachers, whether it's me or Ms. Crothers or Mrs. Buchanan, are all here to support you, and we're going to be doing that. So if you have any questions, make sure you reach out to us, and we'll support you in any way that we can. And just really looking forward to getting back to school after the summer or whenever that is. and seeing your faces, and hopefully you guys can hold me back from making some silly jokes and stuff when possible. But yeah, so it was good. Well, kind of. It was good chatting, even though I did all the chatting. But like I said, if you have any questions, give us a shout, and we'll do everything that we can to help you out there. Okay.